This is Akashvani. In the program Spotlight, now we bring a discussion on India's rising prosperity. The participants are Anil Padmanabhan, economic analyst and journalist, and Sonu Sood, anchor.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Friday quoted two research reports to point out that India is making remarkable progress on achieving equitable and collective prosperity. He cited one research report by State Bank of India and another by journalist Anil Padmanabhan to underscore the above-mentioned points. And we are fortunate that we have with us in the studios Mr. Anil Padmanabhan. A warm welcome to you, sir, in Akashvani.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell us what is the data that has been analyzed and what are the key highlights that have come forth?
Basically, I looked at the income tax returns data. The cue was that on July 31st, for individuals, the last date expired. So I was looking at the data and then I saw that the income tax returns had spiked. It grew to almost 7.4 crore. So I went back, as curious, I went back and looked at the data. So I looked at 2022-23, which is the last full year data. This is for the latest returns. And then I thought, okay, let me go back and check. And I went back 10 years and I looked at the data and I found if you go granular among the income slabs, that is 0 to 5 lakhs, 5 to 10 lakhs and so on, the data was telling a fascinating story. So that is where the research began that way and then I followed the cue of the data.
So what was the key highlight? As you mentioned that the number of tax filers has crossed around 7.4 crores and it's a record number, record filing. So what does that show about the strength of the Indian economy?
See, it is telling us many stories. Unless and until we get granular data, we can't make definitive conclusions. But two broad things it is telling us. Why is it up? A very good question. It's up due to one, I would put compliance right up there because in the last few years, particularly after the introduction of GST, there is a coordination between the indirect tax institutions and the direct tax institutions. There's a bit of data sharing. So a lot of people who were evading tax by showing one set of books here and another set of books there, that option is shrunk. Average people will not easily resort to it. So I would put in compliance. Secondly, which is equally important probably, or that, like I said, can't say till we see more granular data, is the spread of economic activity in this country. Previously, you would be focused only on the super metros of Delhi, Mumbai, and then the other metros in a ladder which is declining. But over the last, say, 10-15 years, what we have seen is nature of growth has begun to spread. So more and more, several states, I wouldn't say all of them, have started moving on growth. So what we are seeing within this latest ITR numbers, which is on July 31st, 7.4 crore number, is that the super metros are growing at single digits, the tax filings, but beyond the super metros, they are growing in double digits. And interestingly, like Northeast, even Kashmir. But please remember, this is a small base that we are comparing. But I'm just talking about growth. So we are talking about apples with apples.
So this is an indication that we are getting now. As you said that we are looking beyond metros. That is what this data is indicating. The growth is benefiting, trickling down to the tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities. Can you tell us about this concept of T30 and B30 cities and towns and how those are also showing signs of progress as per these metrics?
Definitely. The T30 and B30 is a classification the mutual funds use. Basically, the regulators put it in place. So T30 by definition is top 30 cities. And when we say B30, it does not mean the next 30 cities. It's actually about 300 cities we're talking about. So we are talking of lesser cities. Top 30 will include cities like Ludhiana, etc. But there will be lesser cities like Meerut or emerging. So that is what we are talking about when we say T30 and B30. So the ITR filings that we are seeing, if we break it into this broad category, we are seeing an uptick particularly in the lower end of T30 cities and among the B30 cities, which tells you that it is spreading now. So which means income is spreading and also, like I said, compliance has grown. So both these factors are playing together to result in this record spike that we have seen.
You have used the terminology, the wealth effect, in your report. Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
See, the wealth effect is what happens is you earn a certain level of income. Now, how do I spend beyond that income? So I invest it somewhere and I get some returns. So that extra return that we get is called the wealth effect. Now what I'm saying is previously the wealth effect was limited to a few people who were the upper echelons of the economic and social framework of our country. But over the last say 15-20 years, the nature of growth, like I explained earlier, has changed. And if you look at the stock markets, the demat account, you need to own a demat account to trade on the stock market, has grown from 4 crore to 12 crore. It's trebled. Okay, these are proxy indicators which tell you a big story. Mutual fund through, the assets under mutual fund are today at about 48 lakh crore. Maybe even 5 years ago, they were half that. Which means people are now putting away money, and that money is what they are using maybe for child's education or a wedding or a vacation or whatever. So all that, whenever I cash that, is called the wealth effect. So what I found in the data, when I looked at the slabs, that is 0 to 5 lakh, 5 to 10 lakhs, 10 to 15 lakhs and so on, I found the average growth in the 10-year period was 300%, the base growth. And for some, it was 400%. So which means this wealth effect is obviously in operation because you are scaling. If you are in 0 to 5 lakh, you are now in the 5 to 10 lakh. If you are 5 to 10 lakh, you have grown up. So you basically traded up. So the wealth effect, I'm saying two things. One, it is increasing. Secondly, it's spreading.
Can we say that better financialization of savings is happening? Because earlier we found that the tendency was to put your savings in non-productive avenues. So you feel that mindset is changing?
Suruji, it's very early to say, but yes, initial trends do suggest, at least among the millennials who don't come with the legacy or baggage that people of my generation would have. So they are far more aggressive in their investment and planning habits. To give you an example, the latest CII had done a survey with Investment Bank on millennials, and they found that overwhelming number of them prefer equity investments, not debt. Someone from my generation will look for security and will have more of debt and less of equity because we are not willing to underwrite that risk. So you have the millennials who are thinking differently, and this is not for metro millennials. It's again, like I said, across the country. So yes, I would say financialization of savings is happening, but not at the desired scale. Even today, probably more than half is still held in things like gold, property, which are not really liquid instruments. But yes, mutual funds, like I said, the base has doubled, but it should be treble, quadruple this sum for it to actually, for us to claim that financialization of savings has taken root.
But the direction that we are moving in is towards that.
Absolutely.
And another aspect I'd like you to tell us about, you're saying that the economic activity is spreading and people, as you said, that it's not only that the rich are getting richer, but the low income are moving up, the middle income are moving up. In fact, the middle class, that has been talked about a lot, that the growing Indian middle class and the growing incomes, that is leading to the overall prosperity. How far do you think the reforms of the government, how important factor do you think this is in enabling this sort of a mass kind of a movement upwards?
So the thing is that this is definitely because of policy change. And I would also throw in, it has contributed. The ecosystem has been fundamentally altered. I'll just come back to that. But I want to say that ideologically also there has been a big shift. Even say 2 decades ago or even a decade ago, business was a dirty word. Always businessmen were abused and there was a certain characterization of them as criminal. Why go that far? If you see Hindi cinema, the villain is always shown in the guise of a businessman who's either a stock market trader or who's trading in commodities or doing black market. So there was a caricature which was negative. Government corrected that prejudice in our minds. Today, business is considered a legitimate stakeholder unless and until they fall foul of the rules, which is true for everybody. So there is no differentiation because you're a businessman, you'll be treated differently. No, you'll all be treated the same as long as you follow the rules. That's fine. But previously that was not the case. Now on top of this, you add the ecosystem that we are talking about. Ease of doing business, it's anecdotally visible to us. Biggest example is disintermediation that has happened. So this is not the last 10 years, but happened for the last 20 years. Banking, for example. Earlier we had to go to a teller. I don't know if the generation who's listening to us has ever had the struggle of going to a bank branch to draw your own money and the kind of hoops you had to go through before getting it. It was a minimum 45-minute exercise. Today you walk up to an ATM and in 5 minutes you have your cash. Even better now, thanks to UPI, you have a QR code, you scan it in seconds and you're through. That's to tell you the width of ease of doing business that we have achieved. Now, it is one thing to say inequality is growing, but another thing to say that it is growing at this level at which it was previously. What has changed is exactly what you said. The rich may be becoming richer, but remember they are at a very high base. Okay, those at the bottom are moving up, trading up, which we clarified right at the beginning. So when you're trading up, you're moving from lower income to higher income categories, which is what we saw in the direct tax slabs. So which means it is no longer that the people at the bottom are stuck there. So the gap was not widening because the bottom was not growing. Now the gap is widening because the rich are growing faster. And why are they going faster? Because today ecosystem, ease of doing business has improved dramatically. So exactly why you're seeing unicorns, 100 unicorns in this country in less than 5 years. I mean, it's a record. You look at the startups, you look at every kid today. Say 20 years ago, you would not have married your child to someone who came to you and said, I'm doing a startup. You would have said, no, too risky. But today, you will probably prefer a boy who's running a startup. So that is a kind of mindset difference we are seeing today and maybe even 15 years, 20 years ago.
At the same time, as you said, that the startup ecosystem, for instance, it has boomed in India. But at the same time, through schemes like Mudra scheme, Swanidhi scheme, Startup India, Stand Up India, all these schemes which are there, many of them are focused on the small businesses to encourage people to become job creators rather than job seekers. Even as we discussed, even in the T30, B30 cities and towns, even in the rural areas, you feel this is also a very, very important aspect of development.
Oh, absolutely, Sonuji, because inclusion has been a big contribution, say, in the last 10-15 years. And I keep saying 15 years because you look at the number of poor who have been pulled out of poverty. There was a recent report from the UNDP which said that India lifted 415 million people out of poverty in the last 15 years ended 22. Now these people have moved into the middle class. They moved out of the poor class, right? Plus, please remember that in 2010, 430 million people didn't own a bank account in this country. Today, they own a bank account and they are in queue, like you said, with all the platforms to take credit, to avail of consumer credit or business credit. And absolutely true, the ecosystem has changed so fundamentally today. It is easier to start a business than to go out and look for a job, go for 100 rounds of interviews. You would rather set up a business, whether it's small or big. And add to it the empowerment of women. So between 2010, 430 million people added, 56% of these accounts are for women. So you have seen since 2014 onwards, all the houses that have been built are in the names of women. The banks are in the name of women. So when money transfers happen, they happen in the name of the women. So the women empowerment is happening, and the direct benefit transfer, which rarely gets its credit, it has made wonders at two levels. One, cash has come to those who need it and who are the beneficiary. How? You linked your Aadhaar, you linked your Jan Dhan bank account, and you linked your mobile, what they call JAM. Basically, you created an economic GPS. So you found out who Anil is and who Sonu is. You made sure no fake Anil picked up that money. You know how much is the saving through this for the government? 3 lakh crores for the government of India. The cumulative savings I'm talking about. That's twice the money that the government of India spent on COVID relief in the first package.
So to conclude, if you could just tell us that this increasing signs that we see of formalization of the economy, be it increasing GST collections or IT filings or the digital footprint that we are seeing, what would be the top 3 advantages of that?
Oh, huge. See, I'll put it very simply that most of us were outside looking in before whatever happened in the last 15 years. Now you're inside looking out. So when you're inside, what are the advantages? One of them I cited credit. How do you grow your business? How do you send your kid to school? How do you get a wedding done in the family? Credit. Earlier you would go to a money lender. Today you can go to a bank. Now that is also changing. The account aggregator framework, the open network on digital commerce, everything is contributing to inclusiveness, and you can't operate within that unless you're inside the system. So which is why formalization is the most important step that India has undertaken in the last decade.
Thank you so much, Anilji, for this detailed discussion and giving us, deeper insight into the various aspects of our economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonuji.
You were listening to a discussion on India's rising prosperity. The participants were Anil Padmanabhan, economic analyst and journalist, and Sonu Sood, anchor. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may share your feedback about this program through email at airnsdtalks@gmail.com or WhatsApp on 9289094044.
ये आकाशवाणी है। प्रस्तुत है राष्ट्रीय फिल्म पत्रिका चित्र भारती।
Silence, lights, sound, camera, action!